Today is June 21st, 2014, and this is episode 120 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is a new field of study. Consult your local futurist, lawyer, and investment advisor before making any decisions whatsoever for yourself. Today on Let's Talk Bitcoin, we're joined by Stephanie Murphy. Hey, Stephanie, how you doing?
Doing great.
Today we're going to be talking about counterparty, and we've got actually quite a panel put together to have this conversation. Robbie, who's one of the developers.
Good to be here.
Next, we've got Adam Krellenstein, one of the other developers, goes by Phantom Freak on the forums.
Hi, it's good to be here, yeah.
Walking the divide between interviewer and interviewee, we've got Tariq Lewis.
Great to be here. Thanks, Adam.
So yeah, thanks everybody for kind of jumping in and talking to us about this. We've covered counterparty. You know, Robbie, you and I did an interview on it just a couple of weeks ago. We didn't have time to get to all this stuff, and so I kind of wanted to get together and have a larger conversation about some of the other elements of it, and also kind of about where the project is going, because there's a lot of activity that seems like is happening in this space. I'd actually like to start, Tariq, with you if we can, and kind of get a little bit of your background in the space, because when I first met you, you were working on, I think it was Mastercoin.
Yeah, I worked with Mastercoin from last year through around January, February as the smart property, smart assets lead. And also I worked in biz dev for the team. We left there and been working with the counterparty protocol for digital tangible trust. And our company, Digital Tangible Trust, essentially digitizes all precious metals into digital convertible money. And we then make that digital convertible money programmable by a counterparty. And we still work with Mastercoin and also Colored Coins and Ripple as well. So we cover the gamut in terms of the various protocols.
For the couple of listeners out there who haven't heard us talk about metacoins or user-created assets before, can somebody just kind of give a brief overview of what the point of this is, why this is something that there are multiple projects like Mastercoin and Counterparty pushing towards?
I think the point of metacoins, and of Counterparty in particular, is to extend Bitcoin's functionality in a backwards compatible fashion, harnessing all of Bitcoin's advantages, and while still being able to drive forward, add new features, and provide new functionality, which the community and the world can now have, given the development we've had in technology since, say, 2009, when Bitcoin was created. Metacoins get to harness all the advantages of Bitcoin while still extending its functionality. By building on Bitcoin, you get to harness its stability, its security, its ecosystem, while still adding value. You want to make those evolutionary steps from the revolution that was Bitcoin. And I think that metacoins are the future of cryptocurrency because they work in this way.
One of the things that the internet brought was the concept of edge innovation, where before the age of the internet, say, let's take a look at phone networks. You would have these giant telco switches. And if you wanted to innovate on this telco switch, you would essentially have to modify the switch itself. And then there'd be regulations that you'd have to go through and standards that you'd have to deal with. The speed of innovation because of that was much slower. In the age of the internet, because of the concept of these multiple layers of protocols and encapsulation of one protocol in another, I can innovate at the edges. So I can make a new Facebook application. I don't need to get Cisco's routers and switches to support my innovation. I don't need to go to the government and ask for permission there. I can do it. So literally innovation happens at the rate that developers can write the code and push it out and work to gain a market for the application. And I think what was really special about Bitcoin is it brought that same kind of the capability for that same kind of innovation to finance and to the whole concept of money itself. So by being built on top of the internet and by being a creation in the internet age, essentially now finance and money can move at that same rate of innovation. So this brings us to the whole concept of money and what money is and how money can, as Andreas had talked about, he had a presentation up at, I think it was the Ontario concept, where he talked about money as a language of value. I think we're all habituated to the concept of money within this nation state concept, but now in the age of the internet, is that even really necessary anymore? You know, I on my Skype list, for instance, I have people all over the world, and I can get in touch with someone from Thailand or China or South America or wherever the case is, And beyond the obvious point of which time zone are you in, so I don't call you in the middle of the night, our interests are not about what country are you in. It's more about what are our shared interests and what are the things that we value together. We have links because we both see value in this concept of XCP, which is Counterparty's currency. And then also these different coins that are being generated on top of Bitcoin, on top of Counterparty. We see value there and we exchange these coins and we create a market for that. So it's essentially I think humans intrinsically understand the concept of value. So it's really essentially taking technology and allowing this kind of innovation and allowing people to create coins and create systems of value at the speed of internet edge innovation. I think that's really one of the big things behind Bitcoin itself and behind Counterparty extending on top of Bitcoin.
Robbie, I really love that explanation. Sometimes when people are just hearing about this stuff for the first time, it's helpful to hear the big picture, but it's also helpful to hear specific examples of what this technology could do. And I know we don't even know everything yet because we can't imagine it, but what are some of the applications, I guess, for these kind of technologies that you're most excited about?
We have Tarek on the phone right here. Tarek, you may want to talk through yours, and then there's several others we can go into as well.
Absolutely. And Adam and Robbie are both correct. In our business, in precious metals, trying to link that to the blockchain is not something we can do quite easily with Bitcoin. And there are many protocols to be able to try to get this done. And to Robbie's point, making it easy to build or to link, for example, gold to a Bitcoin address is something that really has transformed for us, the gold industry, in ways that we are still finding out today. Most people will say, well, how do I connect gold to a Bitcoin? And we're saying, well, with Counterparty, you can actually create an asset. And that asset is then secured by the Bitcoin blockchain. And we don't have to try to reinvent security. We don't have to try to build a new altcoin. Essentially have the evolutionary capacity of Counterparty to extend Bitcoin's capacity to now we can create gold that people can trade anywhere in the world. It's a first for us, and it's not a first for the industry. Like, to Robbie's point, there are telcos, there are big banks that do what we do. Counterparty has allowed, anybody with a little bit of money be able to become their own gold trading company. And I think that is definitive and really democratizes access to finance for individuals and developers and dreamers and innovators who never had it before. And I think because Counterparty makes it so easy and so possible, there's a lot of things and a lot of new opportunities that we're still yet to see people innovate and bring out of the Counterparty protocol by essentially leveraging Bitcoin. If we try to do this on our own alt-chain, or if we try to create an altcoin to do this, we would be destroyed. We would not survive. To Adam's point, using Bitcoin's ability to extend security and other features that we could take advantage of is singular and unique. And I don't think any other secure chain has this capacity.
And that really underlays one of the main advantages of Counterparty over the quote unquote first generation method might have been you manually fork source code into this altcoin, and then not only do you have to gain a market and users of this altcoin, you also have to secure the altcoin. And if you don't, there's 51% attacks and all of that, and essentially now none of that's really necessary. It's like if I said that if you wanted to have your own Facebook page, you need to go and set up your own, copy the source code and set up your own servers and run that just so you could host your own Facebook page. You really, when you do that, you really cut out a whole class you cut out most people, which are not the most technical in nature. You have artists, you have entrepreneurs, you have people that do other things beyond fork source code and run servers. And now you can go into CounterWallet, create a wallet account in about 10 to 15 seconds. And then in another 30 seconds or less, you can essentially create your coin. From that, the question then becomes, let's get down to business. I mean, publicizing it. What do you do? Are you an artist and you want to promote your brand? Adam, I know that you're building LTV coin on Counterparty. So you really focus around the actual subject matter, which is really building a brand, or it's doing crowdfunding, or whatever the case is that coin serves as a vehicle for. That's really the whole idea behind Counterparty, is to really create an open platform for entrepreneurs, for developers, for early adopters and dreamers at this point, where they can really come and build on top of it, utilize the technology, and not have to worry about things like having to secure their coin or having to worry about all these crypto security concepts that go well over the heads of most people. So they can leverage what's there and focus on what they're good at. And it really destroys those barriers No longer do you have to have, in Tarek's case, where to do what he did traditionally, you would have to have all this capital. You would have to go through all these kinds of regulatory hurdles and all this red tape. Much like before the age of the internet, you would have had to, if you wanted to have your own media outlet, you would have had to buy a cable station or get a newspaper and have to print all this, have all these printing presses. Now, a blogger, I can go on there, and if I have good ideas and good content, I can put it out there, publish it, and build a name for myself. And I can do so with very little money. So this is really taking that same concept, and it's extending it out to finance and out to financial markets. And it's only getting started. I mean, this is going to hit then I think the next step after this is probably the stogiest of stogie fields, which would be law. I mean, you have the concept of autonomous contracts and things like that. So, I think what we're seeing is we saw the revolution around information with the internet. And now with Bitcoin and counterparty, we're seeing it with finance and financial markets. That's just starting. And then we're also going to see it with law and in other fields coming up here over the next, 2, 5, 10, 20 years.
What I heard you describe is extensibility built on top of Bitcoin. And I agree that that's definitely inherently useful. But one of the questions that's come up a lot of times, and one of the most common questions we get when we talk about any of this stuff, is why is this better than colored coins? And what is it actually, and why is it good to have a token that is attached to these extensibility protocols? So in your case, it's XCP for counterparty. Why is it better to do that rather than just build it strictly on top of Bitcoin as colored coins do?
Both counterparty, for instance, and colored coins, they're both built on top of Bitcoin. Colored coin certainly it's built more directly onto it. Because of that, it's much, much, much more limited in its potential feature set. Any colored coins protocol really can only have one feature, and that's the creation and transmission of digital assets. Counterparty and a platform which puts the metadata elsewhere in a Bitcoin transaction, as opposed to in the outputs. It puts it in fake public keys or other spaces, can have many, many, many features. It certainly can have the digital assets. It can have the transmission of digital assets. It can have an asset exchange. It can do crowdfunding built into the platform. And you can't have that with colored coins. You certainly can't do the more advanced features like betting and derivatives.
Yeah, and to add on what Adam said, it's essentially with counterparty, we're embedding our data in a different method that colored coins uses. And because of that, can really have this totally arbitrary data format. And with that, if we want to create some kind of feature or create some kind of functionality, it is really, we're not nearly as tied to the Bitcoin core protocol as something like colored coins is. So we have a lot more freedom and flexibility to add features, to add functionality, just to work with the demands of the user base and what developers, entrepreneurs, what innovators, what artists want, what these various different audiences want out of the technology to be able to do what they want to do.
If I can also speak to that a little bit, and talking a little bit more from the business side, I remember speaking with Mark Friedenbach about doing colored coin and why, even we work with colored coin, but not as much. And I told him the core difference is counterparty has always been for us about speed and about ability to deploy innovation, execute, and test. So it's not just about the technology.
So for you, it's also that counterparty or the team has shown that they are delivering and that they're actually, they started this, you guys started this, I guess, 6 months ago now?
Somewhere around November, the actual coding started on Counterparty D, and then we worked through December, and then the reference client was released on January 2nd. And then Counterwallet development started in mid-late January, and that was released on around April.
So Tariq, you're saying that you trust in results here, basically.
Because that's what happens when rubber hits the road, right? We need to be able to make it work. That's what we got judged on.
You can kind of think about this, the early analogy I used with the phone switch, like where a lot of the colored coins things or things with, even things like side chains, when you're working with that, you're modifying, script, or you're modifying more core Bitcoin type functionality if you want to offer these kinds of extended feature sets. And with Counterparty, because we're really, in a way, encapsulating our data within Bitcoin itself, we have a lot of freedom. We have a lot more freedom to build in functionality and to do so very quickly and effectively. So really, we can add features as quickly as we need to. We're not limited by external factors that we have to go and seek permission or things like that.
And in your opinion, that's something that colored coins or projects like that are faced by?
I think definitely more to an extent than Counterparty is, yeah.
I'm curious, like a little more specifically, how counterparty works. So my understanding, I don't even know if this is correct. You can correct me if I've got the details wrong, but my understanding of colored coins, for instance, would be that you've got these specific Satoshis and that they're somehow marked as representing maybe a piece of property in the real world or a piece of gold, let's just say. Maybe Tariq could answer this. And then once it's moved around, it represents the transfer of sort of ownership of that asset to whoever has that little Satoshi that represents it. Did I get that right? And how is counterparty different?
That's absolutely correct. Colored Coins uses that quirk of Bitcoin that when you send money, you send it into particular outputs and particular inputs. You have sources and destination, and transactions are broken up into that in that way. Counterparty sort of abstracts a bit further. It takes Bitcoin just as a platform, just as a data store, as a network for the relay of data. It uses it for what I call proof of publication. You know that everyone can see it, and you know that everyone can see it forever. It's irreversible, that broadcast. And it uses it for timestamping. When you broadcast a message to Bitcoin, when you create a Bitcoin transaction, you know precisely when that transaction was broadcast. And it uses it just for that. It uses it just as a transport layer. You know, the analogy has been given, counterparties like building HTTP on top of TCP/IP. The analogy is not perfect, but that's the closest thing we have to it. And so the way it works is counterparty has its its whole own protocol, its own parsing, and it just embeds that data inside of a Bitcoin transaction. It just hides that data in there. So a Bitcoin transaction has space that you can hide arbitrary data in, and it puts messages in there. Messages like create this token, create this asset, send this asset from here to there, offer something to be sold and bought, make this bet. And all of that can be stored in one Bitcoin transaction.
So instead of using a actual Satoshi that is part of Bitcoin, there's a different token, and for instance, that might represent somebody's physical gold, like in Tariq's case.
Yes, but the tokens have nothing to do with the quantities of Bitcoin.
Right.
It doesn't use the number that's a Bitcoin.
It's more like an order, right? I mean, like it's like you're using the Bitcoin transaction as like a envelope, and then inside of that is your market order or your bet order or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So it's just about the transport. The order that's contained within can be whatever.
This is a really rough analogy. Keep that in mind. But you can kind of think of Bitcoin as like as kind of as Adam alluded to, the internet or the internet protocol and all the routers and switches, and Bitcoin has its own peer-to-peer network of these full nodes, and it has miners that package transactions. In a way, you can think of counterparty maybe like Facebook. So Facebook is actually its own application platform. And when you join Facebook, you get your own page. It's kind of like you can make your own coin, and you can have your own brand. You can build your own followers around your property, your page. You, as a developer, you can also develop applications on top of Facebook that you can syndicate out, and you can publish out to other Facebook users, and they can use that. So Facebook has really built this ecosystem on top of the internet. And because I create a page on Facebook, or I create an app on Facebook, it has nothing to do with the internet itself. It doesn't, beyond depending on the base internet protocols, I don't require some guy running a router somewhere to do anything differently than he's always done to support my application. So, and really Counterparty is a lot like that. And I think that's one of the big advantages of it, is that we can move so quickly because there's no dependencies back on Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin is becoming, in the grand scheme of things, it's still a small market. $5 billion or $7 billion or whatever is not that big when compared to these other financial markets, but that's still a lot of money. And when you get to something that big, you have to be very careful about making changes. You just, like Satoshi did initially when he released this thing, modify code willy-nilly. So by building on top of Bitcoin in this way that we have a so-called embedded consensus system, you make it so that you can be a lot more flexible and not have to depend on Bitcoin, the core Bitcoin feature set, to the extent that something like colored coins would.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.
Hi, Stephanie here. Would you like to turn your book into an enthralling audiobook? Need a persuasive commercial to promote your company? How about a narrator for your explainer video? Here's where I can help. I'm a freelance voiceover artist, and since 2009, I've lent my voice to dozens of audio projects. To hear some examples of my work, check out my website, smvoice.info. If you like what you hear, I'd love to be the voice of your next project. Get in touch at smvoice.info.
A quick question. The Facebook analogy sort of makes me a little nervous because Facebook is a walled garden.
Yeah, well, that's where it breaks down.
Okay.
So that was one of the main differentiating points with counterparties. And when we get into proof of burn, I think that will be really apparent to a lot of listeners. All the technology is open source. We've had a reference client from day one. The focus has really been around creating this open platform that anybody could build up and use, and at the same time, not trying to create this company around it. You have like this company that has to raise money, and money's a lot like rocket fuel. When you raise it, it can help out, but you can also light yourself on fire. That's from my previous experience. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business in another technology space, but the whole idea with Counterparty was to put the technology out there and encourage entrepreneurs and investors to build on top of it and not get in their way, not compete with them, And we can point to several examples of this, companies like Swarm, companies like Vend that are adding on to the core Counterparty feature set, and at the same time building up equity for themselves, building up value, building up a brand. And we're not going to get in their way. I mean, this is really all about these people want to build value, that want to wake up every day and do something really cool that they believe in, and really enabling that kind of functionality and enabling them to make money as well. I mean, we're all for that.
One thing, it's not that we don't want to get in their way. It's not that we won't get in their way. It's that we can't get in their way. Counterparty really is open in that way that no one has control over the protocol.
Yeah, I think to take that to the final step with this, from the start, when we created Counterparty and when we conceived of the idea was to create something for Bitcoin and Linux. Those were our real inspirations there. And to create something that was bigger than any of the founders. We don't need our egos at the center of this, and we don't need to be, I don't want to have something that depends on me in order to live. So our goal with Counterparty is to get it to a point where it doesn't depend on anyone in order to keep moving and to keep growing. And just much like Bitcoin, if Coinbase disappeared tomorrow or Roger Ver disappeared tomorrow, that would really suck and that would be a hit to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin would continue. And that's our goal with Counterparty is to make it so that it's its own ecosystem and it doesn't depend on any one party or any one thing. There's enough people involved and invested in building on top of it that it sustains itself and it just moves forward. And it's not tied to the continued existence of any kind of company or party or anything like that. It's a movement and it's a technology platform.
So when you're talking about not letting founder egos get in the way, I see that from one side, but then on the other side of it, talking about the launch of the Counterparty, token back in, I guess it was December, I totally missed the event, and it was a proof of burn, which basically means that it's like a fundraiser, except the funds can't be used for anything. And then the other side of it is that you guys were all using anonymous names at that point. You were using, just forum names and not being public about your identity. So on the one hand, I see you have a point. It means that it's not about you. It's not about your ego. But then on the other side of it, it means that there's this huge barrier to trust because it's this giant unknown and somebody asking you to burn money, on basically speculation that this project is going to happen. I mean, I understand why you guys would burn, but can you talk to me about kind of the thought process behind the burn in general?
The concept of the burn in general was to in the most minimal and optimized way possible was to initialize balances. In the Bitcoin field in general, I think people have seen enough. There's been a lot of scams and underhanded behavior and things like that. And I'm not pointing, and there still is. And I think that's just, I mean, when you essentially create, people hear it's a new money system. I mean, you're going to attract all kinds of people, and you're out of that, you're going to attract some unsavory folks as well. And some people are going to try to take advantage of other people. And with Counterparty, we wanted to, remove any doubt about that. There was a few factors. The fact that when we initially did this, we were anonymous, and we had several reasons for that. We wanted it to be about the technology. The legal landscape was still is still very much materializing. So there were some concerns there with technology that is this powerful and that challenges the status quo, like Counterparty does. You have to look at that and say, wow, there's a lot there. We wanted to have, when we did this, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there was no way that we could take advantage of people with this. And at the same time, if I'm going to invest in a project, there's a lot that has to go on. And as a developer, I should not be any more entitled than anyone else who's investing. I think that was our feeling as well, that I'm investing at the same level as everyone else. It's kind of like the equality ethos that is really at the heart of the Counterparty project.
I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you saying that you can't take advantage of anybody else as the dev team. But again, just like looking at the way that you did the fundraiser from the outside, it looks like, people who don't have either inside information or aren't ridiculously optimistic about projects that seem like they might be scams. I mean, it seems like those are the two types of people who you could possibly attract with this sort of thing, given the sort of conditions under which it was set up in. And I'm just like, what were you looking for? I mean, hang on, Nigerian scammers. I'm not saying you guys are scammers. It's a terrible analogy, but I just want to get it out there. They intentionally write emails that are not very good because they're trying to make sure that they don't get anybody who's going to obviously know that they're getting scammed. So, I mean, I just feel echoes of this here, and it obviously didn't wind up like that, but were there concerns about that? So, I mean, what happened? You guys actually had a lot of fun.
So when we started, first of all, we benefited not at all from any of the funds destroyed. In fact, every dollar every Bitcoin that was burned diluted what we burned, and so we would have wanted people to burn less. Of course, we didn't act that way because there was also the competing incentive to drive adoption of the platform, and we feel that there's a strong correlation between the number of people that get involved with the platform, especially early on, and the future success of the platform. But also, when we started the fundraiser, we already had a fully working client with all major features and far more than any other competing technology had. All of it was open source, and no one had control over the project at that stage, or could have control over the project at that stage.
Yes, it was public at that stage.
Absolutely.
When people were burning, they could actually go to the GitHub and take a look.
We had a fully working client, which you could download and run and inspect.
That's the point.
And it had a build system.
It had a
build system as well.
Okay, you guys have to remember, this is January 2014. The stuff is working. No other meta protocol at that time was working. And you could
I didn't know that part of the story.
And so even when you came onto the forums and you watched people burn, they were using the system to burn. So for them, it was like, whoa, it has begun. And the pace of pushes on the GitHub repo for that Counterparty D, because people started to give bug fixes and the community came to respond. A lot of people were like, this is insane. Are you guys not keeping the money? How are you not doing this? Because it seemed like too good to be true that here you have devs working tirelessly to fix a protocol they had launched with burning funds that they would not themselves profit from. I don't think any other project has done anything of that level, of that just uniqueness. But from the history now, you look, everybody's talking about burn, right? You hear Mastercoin doing proof of burn. You hear Blockstream doing proof of burn. It has now become the way everybody says, wow, this is a really egalitarian and fair way to distribute funds and to start projects. We're going to co-opt this and use this as well. And I think that is an indication of the success of proof of burn, even though at the time it was, people were just like, this is insane. I mean, it was amazing.
So it seems like this works on projects where you don't need money, but I mean, But that's a requirement, right? You have to not need money in order for a proof of burn to make any kind of sense for you.
Well, I think that with this, we proved that in order to develop top tier technology, you don't need money. You need a talented team that's dedicated to it and believes in the cause and what they're doing.
Linux was not created with money, right? It was, created in a dorm room for free.
And some of the best technologies, that's been the story. Same with Bitcoin. Satoshi wasn't sitting on a pile of $1 million when he decided to create Bitcoin. So we really continued in that same kind of vein. When you're talking about when you're marketing things and things like that, yeah, having some money does help. But at the same time, by working with businesses that build on top of it, they're going to have their own motives to get their word out. And we have several businesses, Tarx is one, which are funded, in which you have funds in order to get their word out. And guess what? They use Counterparty. So, we have our own marketing efforts for the actual Counterparty platform itself, working with the partners and all the individuals building on top of the technology with their own motives and their own desires to market their product or service. It really extends our reach in that way. Just to add to the whole thing about this January burn concept is that not only did we have the working reference client, we also had a working build system, and we had full documentation for it. On Windows or Linux, you could build Counterparty D. You didn't have to run a list of 50 commands to do it. For the most part, it just worked out of the box. And then even if you were non-technical to the point where you couldn't figure out any of that stuff, or you didn't want to, or you didn't have the time, you could do a burn through blockchain.info just by sending Bitcoin. And we had a full guide on how to do that. And then we also had a member of the community, Maxmint, that stepped up, who was a trusted member of the Bitcoin talk community, who offered for a small fee to do the burning for you. And so there was ways for even non-technical people to get involved and to participate this. And all of this was public on the Counterparty forums. So we really, from the start, really put our money or lack of money in this where our mouths were, and said, this is, we're going to show you what we have here. It's already done. It's already working. Try it out. You don't have to trust me with nothing and all these, that's what we've seen a lot of. We've seen a lot of talk. We've seen a lot of talk that was never followed up, and we just wanted to do something differently.
And also you have, follow up with that, Robbie, moral hazard. Even at Mastercoin, we struggle with the challenge of how do we use this money that we've collected? How do we spend it fairly? How do we keep it secure? All those costs overhead, and Mastercoin's a great project and a great team. The burden of keeping people's funds and then justifying the spend of those funds is not trivial. And I think proof of burn just removes that entire layer of management and stress such that, you can get, your devs can get to work and just get the job done.
Yeah, I'd like to add, that's all correct. Proof of burn really is very similar to proof of work. When you run a Bitcoin miner, you're burning electricity and you're burning time, and you're burning the money that you spent on the ASICs or the graphics cards that you use to mine it. That's how it has to be. And that provides the most fair and equitable distribution of a currency. By not having it be deposited all into one address owned by a person or by a foundation, but rather having everyone be able to put forth effort, right? And because money really is just an abstract representation of effort, of value, and turn that into something new.
Hey there, LTB listeners. If you'd like to be one of the first to receive LTB coin, now is the time to prepare, and you'll need to do two things. First, visit counterwallet.co and generate a free multi-wallet that holds Bitcoins, LTB coins, and anything else built on Bitcoin using the Counterparty protocol. With one click, you'll generate a secure 12-word password, and you'll want to keep that safe as it is your private key. Once you've created your password, log into your wallet. You'll see 3 brand new Bitcoin addresses you control. Copy one of those addresses and then head over to letstalkbitcoin.com and register an account in the upper right-hand corner of the page. Inside your account, you'll have a few options, one of which is My Profile. Click on that, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see a place to put your LTB coin address. Paste your newly created Bitcoin address, save the changes, and you're done. When we release LTB coin later this month, you'll be all set. So thanks for listening. Back to the show. So there are definitely a lot of reasons to be built on top of Bitcoin, but as I've used the system more in the run-up to the launch of LTB coin coming up, I've been realizing just how expensive transactions actually are on the Counterparty network. And so it seems like there's a real trade-off that's happened here where you get the much better security, of the Bitcoin network. But on the other hand, like Dogecoin, nobody cares about fees in Dogecoin because it's so inexpensive on a per transaction basis. But I did the math the other day and I'm paying 26 cents US per transaction at current Bitcoin rates because it takes 3 transaction fees per transaction that I send. So, I mean, like, do you think that this is a problem that's going to be solved, or is it just like that's just the price that you pay for getting all of the advantages of using this?
So when you calculated that value, were you also calculating the value of the multi-sig output that was returned to you?
No, I'm calculating how much is going out. Is some being
Absolutely.
returned to
Most
me at the same time?
The majority of money, even in the largest counterparty transaction, is returned to you.
Okay, so explain to me how that works. So I send a transaction of LTB coin to myself. It has to ride some Bitcoin, and then there are multiple outputs, right? So I'm sending I think that the total is like 0.00036 Bitcoin or something like that, all told. What happens to that? Where is it going?
You're sending most of it to yourself, and you're sending a small amount of fees just to create the Bitcoin transaction, have it be relayed to the network. And that's the same with any Bitcoin transaction. The reason you're sending you're sending the money to yourself. All you want really is the counterparty data to be in the blockchain. And so the easiest, fairest, best way of doing that is to just send it to yourself, in which case it gets in the blockchain and no Bitcoin go anywhere. That's the idea. It's a little trick. And that most of the money is returned to you indeed. The fees are also very conservative values, because sometimes they're for very, very high value transactions, which you want to be confirmed as soon as possible. And, a 5-cent fee on a $10,000 transaction on counterparty is totally insignificant and much, much better than any alternative. And of course, it's the same with Bitcoin. Counterparty has about the same fees as Bitcoin, and it can be tweaked, of course, for particular kinds of transactions, and most of the money is returned to you.
So of this of this 26 cents, roughly, 3 transaction fees, how much am I actually expending that I don't get back?
Yeah, it depends on which kind of counterparty transaction you're doing. Bitcoin addresses are large and they're long. And so when you send any counterparty asset to someone else, you also send him 0.001086 Bitcoins, which I guess would be 0.5 cents, 0.6 cents. Maybe there's 2 zeros. I don't remember. So say it's 5 cents. That's about the cost of a Bitcoin transaction. And indeed, all of those values for fees and for the amount of money that you actually send back to yourself, those are all set by Bitcoin D, by the core Bitcoin client. Their minimum values to make it reasonably profitable for Bitcoin miners to mine your transactions. That's a limitation of Bitcoin.
Hold on. Are you saying that you can't cut out the whole step of sort of sending money back to yourself because that's what makes it go through the Bitcoin network?
Well, this is the case with right now how we encode our transactions is with multisig. This is really the case with multisig. The costs of the transaction are higher, but it's actually a lot of that is returned back to you. It's just I don't believe at the current time it's recoverable with counterparty itself.
It is recoverable. It is recoverable. Yes. Not with counterparty itself, but there's a website that launched a few weeks ago that does that.
It's very ironically DexX7, who is a Mastercoin developer, actually created a recovery app to recover all the outputs with one command. And I was able to recover a few $100s, all our counterparty transactions. So Adam, yes, you can recover all the money that you spend to yourself.
That's the other thing I was going to ask is like, I don't feel like I've gotten the funds back. We've had to move wallets a couple of times, and every time I have to move a wallet, that's like 100 transactions because I got a bunch of different assets kind of early on. So yeah, it's actually been a fairly decent amount of transaction fees making these various switches, but that's great. So what's the tool again for recovering it?
So DexX7 did an alpha tool. I'll have to find it. I can send it to you.
Okay, that's fine. Link it to. We'll link it in the show notes. If anybody's actually done this yet, it might just be me that's having this particular problem. That's really interesting to hear, and I'm glad that that's being solved. The distributed exchange. You guys have a decentralized exchange. That's one of the primary features, and I've had good experiences with it, and I've had bad experiences with it, and I'd like to kind of talk about that. The bad experiences have been trying to buy anything with Bitcoin. That's actually, I found to be quite hard. And I've successfully done it once, but it took like 2 hours and there was an hour wait in the middle of it. But on the other side of it, when I've tried to buy, yesterday I bought some Nice Plum, which is another artist coin, self-launched artist coin that someone's released on Counterparty. And I did it with XCP buying Nice Plum. It was done in like 15 minutes and I didn't have to do anything. So I've had like really good experiences on the asset side with XCP, and I've had really bad experiences with it on the Bitcoin side. What's the problem here? So, why is it this way, and will it get any better?
The reason it is more involved on the Bitcoin side is because the protocol ability to escrow Bitcoin, because we build on top of Bitcoin. Part of the decentralized exchange is normally with a counterparty asset, when a user makes an order, the protocol itself will escrow those funds, kind of hold them in escrow. And then as other users make orders where there's an order match, the protocol exchanges these funds. This is a buy and a sell side exchange. So it's advanced because the protocol automatically matches the funds. And with Bitcoin, you essentially can't do that. I can't escrow those funds. So there's a follow-up operation. And in between the actual order match happening, when the protocol actually matches the orders, we do wait about, I think it's about 5 or 6 blocks because of the possibility of a what's called a blockchain reorganization, which could mess things up if it happened during the course of that. So for safety reasons, we wait those blocks, and then in CounterWallet itself, if you're using CounterWallet, it will automatically make what's called the BTC pay, where it actually pays the Bitcoin. So most of this with Bitcoin, it really is just that the operation will just take longer. And if you're selling Bitcoin to buy some kind of counterparty asset, that's when you have to really essentially keep the wallet open so that it can make that automatic BTC payment.
Well, one of the other problems, though, that I and others have run into is it seems like order matching is a little bit. I mean, it just seems like it's not working very well on the Bitcoin side, and like I don't see doesn't seem to be a problem on the counterparty asset side, but on Bitcoin side, it's like if you're not directly matching an order, then sometimes it's not finding you. Am I mistaken on this?
And part of that, and Adam can go into a little bit more detail about this if necessary, is that there are some anti-trolling mechanisms with fees that only exist for Bitcoin itself. And I think there's 2 things to remember with this. The first is that Counterparty has the most advanced decentralized exchange that's out there. We're really the first ones that started doing this, and our DEX is buy and sell side. It's the most powerful DEX, and it works with Bitcoin, where you can essentially trade Bitcoin for any other kind of asset. And then also we do have this concept, and it's starting to gain a little bit more prominence, called XBTC. It's a proxy token for BTC, but a 1-to-1, and it can be exchanged for BTC 1-to-1 as well. And so XBTC is also a counterparty asset, and you can trade that without having to go through the BTC payment operation and having to go through these kinds of issues. So we are trying to make this as fluid as possible, but just with Bitcoin itself, and it's only with Bitcoin itself, not with any other kind of counterparty asset, there is just this inherent extra step that makes it a little bit more cumbersome compared to your experience with that other counterparty asset that you.
It is somewhat more awkward to buy something with Bitcoin than it is elsewhere. Better over time, as we tweak user interfaces, as we change magic values in the network, things like the number of blocks you wait after an order is matched to make the payment. All of that, yeah, it's inescapable. But really, what it does point to is I think the remarkable ability of Counterparty to interface directly with Bitcoin. That's something that an alt blockchain could never do, and that's a very powerful thing, right? That everyone has Bitcoin, right? A lot of people in the cryptocurrency space have Bitcoin, right? You can almost assume that they do. We're not saying that you don't have to buy XCP, for instance, in order to buy another counterparty asset. You can buy that directly with Bitcoin. Yes, it's awkward, and yes, it might take even an hour, but that functionality exists here, and it really can't exist elsewhere or otherwise.
Another thing, Adam, as we're on this topic, I'll mention this quickly, but one thing that we're exploring at the current moment is how to, another issue that one you brought up in the past is the when you do operations in CounterWallet, all of that is actually on the blockchain. So that means that when I do an operation, I have to wait for the next block confirmation in order to see that action actually happen and be published to the blockchain. So that is inherently, at one level, that's inherently how it is. Level, there are kind of ways around that to have more immediate user feedback, and we're exploring how to enhance the technology farther so that we can zero confirmation feedback. This will make the experience at least look a lot more like a centralized, working with BTC or some kind of other centralized exchange, where when you do an action, you send stuff, you make an order, there very, very likely is a way where that can be reflected more rapidly to you. And then it actually will still settle after one confirmation, but it allows the interface to be a little bit more intuitive where we can show it a lot more quickly.
Another thing I've heard a lot about with counterparty is betting.
It's kind of funny that when we initially made this technology, I'm not a gambler or do anything with betting. This functionality actually comes from things, binary options and contracts for difference, which are legitimate financial tools, but it's also an extension of voting, kind of. Yeah, in a way. I mean, a binary option is essentially an all or nothing wager or bet where I bet on some kind of yes or no event in the future, like who's going to win the Super Bowl, or will the weather in Philadelphia be above 70 degrees next Thursday? Anything that can have a binary outcome. And I have someone I engage in that tool or instrument with, and then if I win, I get all of the their wager, and if I lose, I give them what I have as well. That's what the tool has, but it can be used for all sorts of applications. And we're seeing with CFDs, you can use that for hedging, but we're also seeing things come out of it, such as essentially peer-to-peer sports betting and things like that. Now, that's not something we're running ourselves, but this is an open platform and people are building on top of this technology. And you have these feed operators coming off with that, which in itself is actually, when you look at the whole field, is actually revolutionary. You don't have like this VIG or this fee that these people have to pay to a bookie in the middle. And also, if people don't want to pay that today, they get on these. I was kind of my eyes are open to this with Matt on our team earlier, who's a professional poker player. So he's all into this industry, but if you don't want to engage and have that person take that 10% fee, which is quite often is what it is, you have these shady kinds of forums where you are essentially trusting the other person that you're working up against. And they repeatedly have incidences where someone will just walk away with $50,000. They'll do a bunch of bets and they'll walk away with that. This technology can have huge uses there to both lower the fee and to make it so that people are not getting taken advantage of because the protocol is actually escrowing the funds. Despite whether what you think about betting itself as being something that just is, or you see it in a negative light, at the very least, it can help make this behavior, which is, I think people are just going to do no matter what. It's part of what a lot of humans do. It will make it a lot more safe and where people aren't getting taken advantage of due to the decentralized and trustless nature of this technology.
There is, binary options have a lot more to, opportunity beyond, just sports gambling. Currently, I'm working with a team that is looking at binary options on counterparty for earthquakes. A lot of people don't know, but in California, in U.S., we have about 176 earthquakes every day, and about 82 of those earthquakes are in California. The question we have is, can we create a binary option, that pays out based on, a trustless feed from the, earthquake, measurement office in the U.S. that says, hey, you just had an 8.9 or 9.0 earthquake on the Richter scale, you will get paid out. And so now we're looking at, wow, could you innovate on earthquake insurance based on a binary option approach? And what other ways can we use counterparty to really take advantage of, one, trustless feeds, two, betting, but betting on these new ways that protect people in ways, whereas before, you'd spend a lot of money on earthquake insurance or maybe even possibly be denied the insurance because you're in a high risk area. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, particularly in the insurance space, that is yet to be uncovered with, protocols like counterparty, where people are building that type of innovation.
Yeah, and this is really at its core what counterparty is. Like I said before, we release these general and generic financial tools, and binary options is one of them. And they have all sorts of applications, and people can use them for everything. There are tons and tons of very legitimate applications for binary options, and Tarek went into one of them. You're just really putting the technology out there, and people are going to come around it and build on top of it. And we really can't control what they use it for, but at the same time, it's really neat to see all the different kinds of ways. Like, I would have never thought this earthquake application that people would use it like that. And the best kinds of ideas they're just really the ones that we never thought of.
Yeah, I love the unstoppable innovation aspect of this. And I like that you guys are, again, you've taken the approach that it's all about the protocol. It's all about trying to enable people and, create a toolkit and then just try and build it out from there. So yeah, I think that, again, it's a very interesting project. And I think it's very, it's compelling to see you guys making such fast progress with it when it seems like it just takes a long time to build these things out. So, kudos definitely at the pace of progress you're making. that really is all the time that we have for this episode. Clearly, we're going to have to get you guys back on in a couple of months and see what's developed with the platform because, you've just rolled out the binary options a couple of days ago. Are people using those yet?
For earthquakes, yes. we just haven't launched it yet, but there's some interesting stuff happening there. There's a great team working on it.
Yeah, there's some stuff under development that it should be coming out in the next few weeks, I think, in multiple domains using that technology.
Thanks for listening to episode 120 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for this episode was provided by Stephanie, Tariq, Robbie, Adam, and Adam B. Levine. This episode was edited by Adam B. Levine. Music for this episode was provided by Jared Rubens, General Fuzz, and Gertie Beats. Any questions or comments? Email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. Have a good one.